Southwest Florida. Welcome back to Lee Pitts Live here in the community where I love to be, and certainly I love to be in the community with one Joe North, the famed attorney here in Southwest Florida. If you're looking at us anywhere in the country, we're here in Fort Myers in the heart of the Dunbar community, which is the largest black community here in Southwest Florida. That's the southwest quadrant of the state of Florida. We're in the city of Fort Myers, and we're in the black community where we belong. And I got a prodigy from the black community here, Attorney Joe North, who went on to become a successful attorney. But before then, he grew up right here, and he was a standout track and field star. Joe, welcome to Lee Pitts Live, man.
Thank you, Lee, and thank you for doing the show right here at the Stars Complex, because, you know, back in the day, we called it the Rec Center.
Okay.
And I used to get taken to school on these courts, although I took a couple of people to school myself on these courts right here.
Okay, you had babasketball game too?
Not as much as you. I know you were the famed point guard. I was all right.
Now, people have seen me talk to Coach Lathan, but did you see him running around as a little snot-nosed kid then? And when did you start seeing Andrew Lathan?
Well, I know he's been all over the
Canterbury,
media
future Hall of Fame
in recent years, but
coach.
I didn't know him as a kid.
Okay.
Like you knew him when he was a kid.
Yeah, he was always a solid cat. Now let's go to. You grew up here in where are we now? Tell people where we are. We on Edison?
We're on Edison Avenue at the Stars Complex, and I grew up about 2 miles from here, if that, on Barton Street, which is the street that goes right down from Dunbar High School.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
So you went off, came back, and then got into the law practice. We'll mention that in passing because we're going to talk about some serious things that you play a vital role in. But before we do, if people see over my shoulder that black car right there, my budget can't handle that, folk. But that shows you the success of my good friend, Joe North. What's the model of that car, man?
It's a 560.
Okay,
just say it's 560.
Okay. Hey, it's nice to see you riding around in it. Now, when you were riding around in the neighborhood, and I don't want people to think I'm saying this is a dangerous neighborhood or anything, but you feel comfortable riding around, being in this neighborhood, no matter how fancy your car is and everything, walking around amongst the people. What have you done, do you think, to engender such a love for, I'm saying this, you're not saying this, an admiration for you as a community person?
Well, it's actually the flip side of that. I have the admiration for this community. I mean, this is home for me, and, you know, there's no place like home. So, yeah, as I move around, I feel like I'm at home, and I'm treated like I'm at home. Mm-hmm. And that's the way it is, and that's the way it's always going to be.
And you never miss the Easter parade. I see you in there every time waving you and your dad.
That's right, and I still throw out the candy, even though I'm not supposed to.
Okay, people who are looking in, Joe, we need to explain to them what is an Easter parade. It's a tradition only that I know of in Dunbar, in Fort Myers. I don't know other people that have Easter parades.
Well, we've been having the Easter parade here in Dunbar since I was a baby, since I was a kid. And, you know, whether you are riding on the float and throwing out candy to all of the crowd, or you're in the crowd waiting to get the candy and looking at all the floats, it's just a great time had by all. And it's the tradition of it all. The entire community comes out for that. And it's really like one big family reunion on that Easter Sunday. And
I think about this sometimes. I say, okay, let's just say Joe North was not, let's just say you had an encounter with the police. And we're going to talk about police and systemic racism and general and in specifics. If they don't know that you are Attorney Joe North and all the things that come along with that, there's no special treatment that you're going to get. Do you ever feel like you black, okay?
All day.
Okay,
That's
so
right.
What I'm getting at is, no matter how fancy you are, you still in that black skin, and there's always things you have to be aware of and concerned about. Go with that for right now as it relates to your interaction with law enforcement.
You're absolutely right, Lee, and I'm sure you can relate to this too. No matter where we are in life, whenever a police car comes up behind us, our blood pressure ticks up a couple of notches, because we know that things could pop off at any moment just because we're black. They don't look at us as Joe North or Lee Pitts. They paint us with a broad brush, and we're racially profiled, unfortunately. And that's the conversation that you and we have with our boys. We both have, sons. And unfortunately, I don't think our white counterparts have to have some of those same conversations that you and I have with our sons about what to do in those scenarios.
Right, and since the George Floyd incident jumped off, I've been hearing people on television, on national news, and all of TV talking about it. And to me, it was like, hey, that been going on. We've been having those conversations. We've been dealing with this, and it's just like a natural thing. Like, I don't even remember a hardcore conversation by my parents with me as it relates to law enforcement, me being black. It was just understood. It was always talked about around the house in general. You know,
That's right.
You black, these are some things that you're going to encounter, and here, you know, you better be careful about this, that, and the other, right?
That's right.
And then what happens is years later, you move out, you get your college degree, you're wearing your little suit, you might be on television or whatever things, working at a bank, a lawyer, all these types of things, and you still remember that you're black.
That's
and
right.
there are things along the way that remind you that you're black all the time. Even on your job, you're reminded that you're black. Now, when you first came back from Florida State to work here, you were the first African American to work at a major law firm here. I don't know if I'm describing it right. Go ahead and describe that to me, and I'll go.
That is correct, and I don't know how you know that, but leave it to Lee Pitts. But yes, he's correct. When I came back home to practice law in 1990, I was the first African American to work ever at a large law firm. Of course, we had other African American attorneys, but none that had worked at a major law firm representing corporate clients. And that's what I did for about 5 years. I always knew that wasn't for me. I wanted to represent the people. So after about 5 years, I left that firm and opened up, my current firm, which I don't represent large corporations. I represent only the individuals, the people and their families.
I see. Now, when you first got into the law, you already had some type of understanding of the civil rights movement and the struggle that black people had. I'm sure you read up on Thurgood Marshall, and you had some other role models who were champions for the disenfranchised in America. Who influenced you along that way, legally speaking?
Well, in speaking with my dad, of course, I knew about Martin Luther King, and going to law school, I knew about Thurgood Marshall. And as I started practicing, of course, I always kept the civil rights movement, which was the 60s, in the back of my mind and in my eye. But I tell you, the civil rights movement that we have going now, which I call the civil rights movement of 2020, I think is far beyond what was happening in the 60s. And I think we cannot lose this moment. We have to seize this opportunity to keep it going, because what's happening now, I believe, will effectuate some change that we haven't seen in a long time.
Why do you say that? Because, I mean, don't let me listen to you. I would think that because you are such a guy that knows that it all depends on what you can prove. You can listen to a news report and you can say, okay, this is what the attorneys for the police officer, this is the angle they're going to try to take to get them off. And then you can kind of see some holes in there already. But why do you think that this is a seminal change right now?
I don't want to say that it was one single event, but what happened to George Floyd was a major event, because it's something that no one can dispute. We all saw the video. And we
saw Rodney King.
When you have those facts, everyone has to know, well, we got to do something. And I say it's going to be empathy, putting yourself in someone else's shoes. When I say someone else, meaning non-African Americans, saying, you know what, I see what they're talking about now. I feel what they're talking about. And that's the reason why you've had so many non-African Americans in the marches around this country and around the world, because of that empathy. And it really goes back to the Bible, the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
And when I turned on the television that first night when we started seeing these protests, and I was looking at the TV, and I was like, I get a double take. I said, it looked like mostly white folk out there.
Yeah.
I was like,
yeah.
huh? I got all of us were doing
it.
double takes, right?
Yeah.
What do you think? Why do you think this generation now want to be on a better side of history?
I think you just summed it up, actually. Being on the better side or the right side of history, because everyone looking at that, and not just with George Floyd, but other instances around the country over recent years, we know that it was wrong. Mm-hmm. There's no getting away from that. So when you look within yourself, you have to say, you know what? Do I want to be wrong or do I want to be right? And it's just within us, everybody, black and non-black, to want to be right.
Mm-hmm. Let me take you through a scenario with me. I got different scenarios where I had encounters with law enforcement.
Okay.
Well, let me just take one right now that I think would be fun to talk about. People will kind of relate to it. At this time, I wasn't a recognizable name or anything. I was a banker and working at the bank, and I was traveling down I-75, coming out of Sarasota, headed this way. Had my red BMW. That's a factor, people, having a red BMW. You don't supposed to have a red BMW, look young black dude. I think I was around 29, something like that.
Okay.
And so I pulled over. I got sleepy. I pulled over at a hotel, and I parked in the parking lot up under a tree like this, and I just laid my seat back, and I'm going to take a little nap here. I don't know how long I was asleep. Tap, tap, tap on my window. I look up, state trooper, blah, blah, blah. And then eventually got me out the car and started asking me a lot of questions. And then he said, like, what are you doing here? I said, hey, I'm sleeping. I've been told if you get sleepy, pull over. Don't keep driving sleepy, all of this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And then he went into this, is it okay if, get your driver's license and all that. Is it okay that I look in your trunk? Mm. Okay. And I'm like, why does he want to look in my trunk? So
Jay-Z said you're going to need a warrant for that.
Right.
So go ahead.
So I guess that's what they're supposed to ask me permission, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I said, yeah, you can look at my trunk. So you look at my trunk, and there in my trunk is my briefcase, my banker briefcase. I had a banker briefcase. Oh boy, I guess he think, oh, that's loaded with cocaine.
Yeah.
Okay. And so and then because I'm well dressed, I was spit and polished with my corporate clothes on. And so you mind if I look in the briefcase? Open up the briefcase, see some files, some loan closing, some big documents. I said, hey, that's my business card. You look at my business card. Oh, this guy's a vice president, a little young vice president, this and that and other. And so after it was all over, me and the white law enforcement officer, I felt like I was like being overly scrutinized, okay, because of my race, but I didn't say anything. I knew he wasn't going to find anything. Mm-hmm. So then he goes, you fit the description. That's what he told me. He said, you fit the description. And I said, well, he said, yeah. He said, traveling from north, headed south, well-dressed. He said this, I didn't. Good-looking, black guy, fancy car. That's the description of people we're pulling over right now, bringing drugs down from the north, like Chicago, Detroit. That's the general description, and you fit that description. And I said to myself, man, if that's the reason that you're taking me through all of this, because I done worked hard to make it in life, and now I fit some description that you're supposed to take me through all this. If I was white, none of that would matter.
Right.
What did he do anything wrong? Did I do anything? I mean, what do you think about that whole exchange there?
Well,
that's profiling.
It's profiling. He was wrong. He should not be stopping you and searching your vehicle because you fit a quote-unquote description. I know that most young people do what you did and allow the officer to search the vehicle. I always advise people to not allow that because you never know if an officer is if it's the bad officer. Now, most officers are good officers, but you've got a few out there who may plant something, because they think you're showing them up. You're doing all the right things. Who do you think you are? And then they plant something, and it's going to be your word against their word. So I always say, unless they've got a warrant, don't volunteer a search of your vehicle or your possessions. Just like with the cell phones. A lot of people don't know this, but officers don't have a right to search your cell phone, to look into your cell phone and get information. Not without a warrant, but sometimes people hand them over and let the officers look through them.
Really?
Yeah.
So are we supposed to stand up to the officer and say, no, you can't look at this? No, what are we supposed to do? Let me call my attorney. What would they say to me when I say, no, you can't do this? How does that play out?
I think you say no, and that should be the end of it, unless they've got probable cause to go further. And if they want to go further, then you ask for a supervisor. Mm-hmm. And if you ask for a supervisor, they have to get a supervisor out there on the scene.
Oh, really?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now they're wearing these body cameras, right? I would think that helps you, but you don't really practice that kind of, anyway. Now they're wearing these, I guess the body cameras still matter even in what you do.
I see the body cameras, and they're great when they are operating. But under the current state of the law, officers have some discretion on when to turn them on and when to turn them off. I say that the policy should be as soon as you turn your lights on, the body camera goes on, and it stays on until that incident is over. But sometimes when they're talking to witnesses, talking to the person that they've stopped, they'll turn the camera off. They'll say, well, it's because we got to make sure that we preserve certain information. Okay. I don't like that. I think it should be on the whole time.
How can we tell if the camera's on? Is there a light blinking or anything?
There's a little light there, yes.
Okay, so I'm going to start looking into that camera when I'm talking, and I know that light blinking. Like, hey, turn that on now. Then I'll say, I don't want you to search my car.
And and you have a right to video what's happening with the officer. Now, sometimes the officers will say, turn your camera off, turn your video off. You can't video me. Yes, you can, especially if you're in your own car. As long as you are not getting in the way of an investigation, like going onto a scene that doesn't involve you, as long as you're not doing that, you have a right to video what's happening with that officer.
Has Joe North ever had an incident with law enforcement that could be considered systemic racism in the way you were treated or anything?
Well, not too long ago, I was out at the airport right here in Fort Myers.
Really?
And my cousins had come down. I was picking them up, and sometimes you just pull up where they have people coming out from the baggage claims. And this one young officer from the Port Authority came over and said to me, well, it's a good thing, because I sat there for a minute. He said, it's a good thing you moved when you did, because otherwise I was going to have to arrest you.
Really?
Yeah. And I'm thinking, okay, do I want to argue with this guy or just let it go? So I didn't say anything to him, got my cousins, and we were on our way.
I see.
But
you think you'd have been treated differently had you been white?
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, yes, I would have been treated differently if I was white. Yeah.
You think he was serious on that arrest, and he was serious?
Or at least it threatened me with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now you tell the story, and it's all about how important it is for community policing. Our current city, you don't know, I remember everything you say, but our current city councilman, Ward 2, Johnny Streets, was formerly Sergeant Street. And you say that by him being a community police, he saw you doing something that wasn't right, but he didn't run you downtown and log you into the system and mess up your history of give you a criminal record.
Right.
Tell that story.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that one day you're going to tell us what you were doing. This might be it. Come on, Joe.
You're going to have to ask Councilman Street about that. But anyway, when I was in high school, I was doing something that I should not have been doing. It wasn't anything major, nothing really, really bad, but it was something that I shouldn't have been doing. And Councilman Streets, who was Sergeant Streets at the time, he came up on it and recognized that I was making a mistake, but he also recognized, hey, this is not a bad kid, doesn't come from a bad family, so I'm just going to talk to him and send him about his way. Now, had it been a white officer, not always, but sometimes, they would have made an issue of it and maybe taken me down, and I would have had a record behind that, and that could have affected everything that's going on with me for the rest of my life. But Johnny Streets, being from the community, knew that not every instance of a violation needs to be taken downtown.
It's interesting that you say that, Joe, because if it had been a white kid, and I don't blame the white kid for getting cut a favor, but we want favors too, and a white cop had gotten a white kid in a situation doing something they weren't supposed to do, they'd be less likely to get run downtown, get a record, and all these kind of things that's going to follow them in the future. So I'm thinking that also says something about the importance of having police officers in a community that know people. Speak to that.
Yeah, in fact, when I think of community policing, what I think about is actually having officers who live in the community or who have ties to the community policing that community, because then they've got a stake in what's happening, a personal stake. So when I say community policing, I'm thinking about officers who really have a part of the community, and they go to church in the community, they know people in the community.
That makes a big difference, because I don't want to spend too Johnny Streets' horn, but Johnny Streets has impacted a lot of us. When I used to work right here at the Stars Complex, people, when I was in there teaching that swimming program, me, Andrew Lathan, and the fellas, Johnny Street used to come in there. I don't know if Andrew was old enough to remember that, but Johnny Street used to come in there, talk to the kids. When I used to have my little parties for him, he'd give a speech to them, and he could tell me all about the SEALs and my teens all the time, and they would see him walking around with his uniform on, and it made such a big difference, because it just, I would say he was the first police officer that I actually like knew. This is Johnny Streets, and he was like trying to get to know everybody, shaking hands and everything. Sometimes
Very personable. Yeah, that's right. That's Johnny Streets,
and
it makes a difference.
And I think you're a big fan of him as a city councilman, aren't you?
100% behind him.
Johnny,
Yep.
you just got that from Joe. And
He already knows.
Okay, let's don't get too political there. Joe, let's go to the systemic racism and a lot of these things that have jumped off. We started to see more and more black people on TV now since we had a racial incident. And of course, on Leap Is Live, we see black people on television all the time. But systemic racism and the laws that are on the books right now that generally make it very difficult when it relates to law enforcement towards black people and minorities. There are laws on the books that can impact, make it almost protect them from they basically can never almost be convicted of anything. Go ahead.
Well,
What's that law?
Well, it's the qualified immunity.
Right.
So if an officer actually kills a citizen, you can't sue that officer civilly. It's very difficult to get a conviction criminally, but civilly, you can't sue them. If someone has a car accident and they kill someone, you can sue them civilly. If someone with a badge kills someone, you can't. And I think that needs to change, because if an officer knows that there are consequences for his or her actions, I think they may conduct themselves differently.
Mm-hmm. What advice would you give to particularly African-American males as it relates to when they interface with law enforcement? Do they need to be trying to run away? Do they need to be trying to hide? Do they need to follow all the rules? We saw that George Floyd looked like he was following all the rules. What do we do from here?
Well, I'll tell you a very difficult conversation that I had with my son and nephew. They're in their 20s.
Joseph.
And yes.
Okay.
And Bryant. So I told them there may come a time that you get stopped by an officer and you know that you haven't done anything wrong. And the tendency is going to be upset, and maybe things jump off from there. But what I'm asking you to do, my son, my nephew, is to live to fight another day. You know, go ahead and take the humiliation at that time, bring it home to me, and then let us handle it. But come home. Mm-hmm. And the reason that's significant is because I don't think that white fathers are having to have that conversation with their sons. Mm-hmm. And I would ask them, put yourselves in our shoes. Try to understand what we go through, because then maybe you'll be on the same team as we are and can help bring about some of this change that we're trying to accomplish.
Now, when you see all of this change that looks like it's taking place, I mean, certain things are happening right now. Laws are being changed. Looks like people are looking at different ways to manage. Statues are being torn down, symbolic racial things. Professional sports are saying Black Lives Matter. I was listening to Jimmy Graham, the famous pastor preacher who died. I was listening to his son today on a commercial. He was saying Black Lives Matter.
Great.
I think his name was Randy Graham or whatever. I can't remember.
I know you're talking about, though.
Yeah. So, as a person standing back looking, you really think that's something? What are some key things that you're already seeing that are seismic shifts in terms of the way people are looking at laws on the books now?
Well, one of the best ways to bring about change is to hit them in the pocketbooks.
Okay.
And that's what I do every day as an attorney. So what we're seeing around the country is major corporations pulling their sponsorships back from sports teams.
Right.
So that's significant to me. What you also see is
the Washington Redskins.
Yeah.
No longer going to be Redskins for sure. Go ahead.
By the time the football season starts, that's right.
Right.
And around the country, we are seeing that statutes are coming down. And in the state of Mississippi, they're changing the flag because they had that Confederate sign on it.
Right, and one of those star football players, he complained he wasn't going to play for Mississippi with that flag.
That's right. And you know how much money football brings in? Again, you're hitting them in the pocketbook. Yeah.
And once you hit the pocketbook, everything goes out the window, right?
That's right, because we all can agree on that. That's right.
That's funny, man. Now, I'm not going to say where you live or anything, but I'm going to say this. I'm going to tell you how racism people don't see. And this is to all my white friends out there, too, who are looking. People, you may see me and say, oh, that's Lee, he's nothing. But people don't see don't expect black people. It's not normal for black people to be successful. Many times in my banking role as a vice president, people might think that I'm just a teller at the bank, or something like that, until I tell them, my responsibility. But sometimes, here's the key. When I'm out watering the lawn at my home, right? This is when it really hit me. I'm out watering, nice neighborhood, I'm watering the lawn. And white people walking by, doing their power walk or everything. And they ask me, how much do I charge for, much do I charge for, or am I available to do their yard? And things like that. Because I'm black and I happen to have live in a decent neighborhood, I'm the maintenance man. Then I said, no, ma'am, no, excuse me, I live right here. I live right here. So it's always really funny that people have to get in their mindset that black people live okay too. We speak a certain way too. We, dress a certain way. Go ahead. You can relate a little bit?
Absolutely. I can't tell you how often I'm asked, so what do you do? No one expects that I'm a practicing attorney here in town, for those people who don't know me.
Right.
I don't get that here in the community where I'm from, but if I'm outside the community in other parts of Lee County and people see me in that car or they see me in my neighborhood, they ask, so what is it that you do? Almost in disbelief.
And it's almost too like you need to explain yourself too, though.
Yeah, I ask, what do you do?
Right, like, why you living out here? Why you out here? Do you live out here?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I live out here. I mean, I even have it in the swimming pool in the housing, the homeowners swimming pool. I'm out there swimming like a world-class swimmer, and they thinking I'm sneaking in the pool. I'm sneaking in the pool. I'm out there teaching my son to swim.
It's
they think
funny,
I'm sneaking
but it's
in
not.
the pool.
It's funny, but it's pretty sad that in 2020, here we are. But I'm telling you, I sense a change. It's coming. And what we have to do is keep our foot on the gas and not lose this moment.
Right. Now, people actually call you, Joe, for all types of things. Like, they know you might not even practice the type of law that's relevant to them in like criminal situations or what have we, but you are a resource in that way. You can always guide them in certain ways, listen to things. Are you always open to that?
Absolutely. In fact, I consider myself to be the Lee Pitts point guard when it comes to law. I distribute things. So when the ball comes to me, if it's for a criminal law case, I'm probably going to refer it out to either Cedric Hall or Peter Dennis. If it's a family law case, I'm going to give it to Tricia Prado. It used to be Kathy Bruno, but she's now the school board attorney. So I've got a list of attorneys.
So you're doing it no look, or you just doing what's
look,
that?
Over the head. I send them over.
What's
to
that guy named that quarterback at Kansas City just got that big contract?
Oh, Patrick Mahomes.
You doing the Patrick Mahomes?
That's right. That's right.
No look.
Yeah.
You just like, as soon as it come over your neck,
yeah. 'Cause a lot of times people don't know who to call, but they know me. They know that I'm a lawyer, so they'll call me, and then I'll put them in the right direction.
And vice versa.
That's right.
That's right. That's the way y'all need to keep that synergy going. I want to shout this guy out that you were going to interview today, but I know you're going to get him back in the future. Let's go ahead and give him some publicity, a local lawyer.
Peter Dennis. So Peter Dennis, he's been practicing for about 20 years. He has a local office here, and he does criminal defense work. And what I love about Peter is not only is he very knowledgeable of the law, but his heart is in it. And when you got that combination, you're going to do a good job for the clients.
Hey, Joe, if somebody wanted to get into the field of law, let's give them some tips before we leave. That's a good, admirable place to be, right, to make a difference in society?
Yeah, and you can go into it two different ways, as an attorney or as a paralegal. So as an attorney, you go to college for 4 years, go to law school for 3 years, take the bar, and boom, you are an attorney. And then you can also work in a law firm doing pretty much the same work that a lawyer is doing, except for going to court as a paralegal or legal assistant.
Mm-hmm. If somebody want to get an internship or maybe get some experience of what have we, the North Law Firm might have opportunities for them?
Yeah, just give me a call.
Oh, man.
Message me through Facebook. I don't do too much on Instagram, so let's go with the Facebook route.
Right. I'm a Facebook guy, too. Well, Joe, it's always a pleasure to get you here. It's one other thing I want to make sure I hit on before we leave, and we'll continue with this, and we'll be doing some stuff on Zoom, and y'all will be able to ask me and Joe some questions. But let's go with, you didn't even set out, you went to college to run track. I don't think you knew what your major was going to be at the time when you went to the Citadel. You were a standout track and field person here in Fort Myers. What's the highest level of track accommodations, accolade that you got in high school? Then I'm gonna work my way up and tell the story.
Okay.
You weren't chopped liver in track and field, right?
No. I mean, I don't want to brag,
But you got to do for the show, so I can establish what I'm getting to.
But I was the fastest
go.
around here, and ended up going to the state meet.
And you beat T-Rock.
And that's what I was about to say. So yeah, I made it to the state meet. But the best race I ever ran was right there on Edison Avenue against Thomas Young, also known as T-Rock. We raced twice that night. And
I heard the story.
And that's in Fort Myers Lower right there. Yeah.
So you go to college, and then you get to college and realize that if you spend the time in track, you weren't going to be able to accomplish what you wanted to accomplish academically. So you talk to your parents about stop running track altogether and just focusing on your books. Tell us about that moment and how you arrived at that moment. And do you recommend that anybody else does do that, or what have we?
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that, being a Division I athlete in college is a full-time job. And it takes you away from the classroom. So if you plan on making great grades, you can still do it as a D1 athlete, but it's more difficult.
Right.
And I saw that I was not going to be able to make the grades to go to law school being a Division I athlete. So I called home, asked my parents if I could come off of the scholarship, and without hesitation, they said yes, took out a loan, paid for my college tuition, and I was able to go to college still without being an athlete. And for that, I'm forever grateful to my parents. Yeah.
That's an unbelievable story. Now, I was an all-around athlete growing up. I was small, as I was telling Andrew when I came out of high school. I must have weighed about 115 pounds, soaking wet, speedster, track. I'm not a track guy, but basketball, swimming, tennis, boxing, all those types of things. So cardio was at an all-time high.
Right.
In fact, my conditioning was so good, I didn't understand it at the time that I went to I had to go to the hospital when I broke my my thumb.
Okay.
I was a trampolinist because of the swimming background. I was a great diver. So our school had a trampoline team. So I used to perform trampoline like you see in the Olympics, all that flipping and stuff. I broke my thumb trampolining anyway. So I had to go to the hospital. So I'm in the hospital, and they're taking all my vital signs. This is the first time I go to the hospital. Growing up in the hood, you rarely ever go to the hospital for anything. You never get sick. You get sick, they drop some castor oil on you and keep it moving, bro. Get you some castor oil. Boom. Mom put you in between her leg, hold her head back. What? Boom. Get you clean you out, and you're good to go. So I go, and they had to do some stuff, put a little pin in my thumb and all that, messed up my tennis career. But long story short, when I was in there, they were taking my vitals. So this nurse was like, wow. Now that I understand what it was, it's just that my heart rate was so low, like world-class athlete. Mm-hmm. She was saying, are you a marathon runner or something? I had just been growing up in the hood playing all these sports. And by the way my pulse was, she was saying, well, when people come here with pulse that low, then they're like world-class athletes, right? I was in the 12th grade,
right,
115 pounds. So she started naming sports. Do you run track? I'm going, nope. Do you do this? I said, nope. Do you do that? She goes, nope. She was naming all the black stuff. Then she said, well, what do you do for cardio? I said, I'm a swimmer. She goes, oh! Because they expect a little black boy like that to be a swimmer. I said, I'm a swimmer. I swim maybe a mile every day, something like that.
Right.
She's like, what? I'm like, yeah, some swim team, this and that and other. That was that cardio. And she was saying, well, that all makes sense because I think what she was thinking, I might be sick. I might have something wrong.
Because your pulse was so low.
It was so low.
Right.
And once she got that, she was cool. She said, oh, no, baby. You good. And that's when I realized how important conditioning was. And I also realized this. This is my larger point, people.
And you still have good cardio.
Yeah, I'm back swimming. But, once you get the kid and settle it down, eating, I'm back moving, folk. Check this out. Joe, I'm glad I didn't get a Division I scholarship, people. The main reason I didn't get a Division I scholarship because I was so little. I didn't have to face that situation like Joe North to make that decision because I would have been thinking I'm going to play in the professional leagues and I wouldn't have been smart enough to go and hit those books. So I didn't have that, so I went straight to school, academics, boom. All right, now, here's my larger point, though. Because of the educational background that I got, no Spurgeon cast on my school. I love my school, Carver High School in Birmingham. but it wasn't the highest in terms of academics. Now that I know what other schools have to offer academically speaking.
Okay.
So when I got to college, I was academically challenged and I had to catch up. If I had been playing a sport, I would never have spent that kind of time catching up,
been tough.
fixing things, and getting myself on to graduation. So I'm glad I didn't have that circumstance that you had going to the Citadel. I'm thinking you had just for you to get in the Citadel, you had a pretty strong high school education.
Yeah, I went to Cypress Lake High School, and I had a pretty good education in high school.
Okay, because I went to an all-black high school, bro.
Yeah.
And just at the turn of the civil rights movement in the 1970s. So those black high schools hadn't been getting all the bells and whistles, but things have improved substantially since that time. Well, Joe, it was always good to get you here, man. Let's do our social distance bump. We got wind blowing. No matter what, we're gonna make Lee Pitts Live happen. When we come back, we're gonna talk to a Hall of Fame, future Hall of Fame football coach, an all-around great guy, Andrew Latham, right here on Lee Pitts Live.
He's the man.